Uh, Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Indian community in Saudi Arabia. Namaste and good evening to all of you. Today we are honored to have with us the Honorable Minister for External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, who's on his first official visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He needs no introduction to all of us. So we are also honored to have Dr. Awsaf Saeed, the Secretary, along with the Minister, who's already, and he again needs no introduction. He's been a former ambassador to the kingdom, and everyone is very, very familiar with him. So it is also a matter of great honor and the importance that our ministry attaches to the Indian community, that the Honorable EM has decided to start his official tour with an interaction with the Indian community. So without further ado, it's my honor and privilege to welcome on stage Honorable EM, sir. Would you like to come, sir? So I would like to invite you to for your remarks, sir.
Namaskar to all of you. It's really a very great pleasure to meet the Indian community and meet you at the beginning of my visit. Normally, wherever we go, I think you all know it is a tradition for the foreign minister to meet with the Indian community. And there are many reasons for this. One, that in many ways, all of you shape the image of India. When Saudis think about India or have a perception about what we are about, in their minds, the individual define what is our country. So, consciously or unconsciously, all of you, through your achievements, through your contributions, through your profession, through your friendships, you have actually collectively built up what is a total Saudi perception of India. And for that, I want to tell you that your country will always be grateful. So, the first reason, therefore, I always like to meet the community is to really genuinely express the appreciation that the government and the country has for all of you. We know that it's not always easy living abroad. I myself have lived most of my working life abroad, so I have some sense of it. That is the first point I wanted to share with you. But there is a second reason as well. We have 2.5 million Indians living in this country. At times the numbers have been more. Again, it is natural that you will have your concerns, your interests, your problems. And it's very useful for me to know that, to understand that, so that when I engage with the authorities, with my counterpart or with the officialdom, I have also your interests at heart. That in some way, if we as the government or I as the foreign minister or the embassy or the foreign ministry can be helpful to advance your interest, to make you more comfortable, to ensure that your requirements are met and your problems in whatever way can be addressed. I think that is also equally important. And that is why In fact, I'm very glad that the embassy took the initiative to arrange this meeting. Right, you are literally my first engagement on this visit. Now, having said that, and I'd be very happy to, after my remarks, to actually to listen to any concerns which you people may have. It's very natural that Indians who live abroad, even though we are in a very connected world today, many, all those phones which I saw pointed at me keep you instantaneously informed of anything that happens in India. So you're probably more updated than I am. But still, you would like to know what is happening in India, a sense of the mood and the sentiment of our society. And that is also something I would like to share with you. It's been probably for the last 2.5 years, you've had very few high-level visitors from India because of the COVID. I myself had, the last time I came here was in my previous capacity. I had accompanied the Prime Minister in his visit here in 2016. Prime Minister came again in 2019. But in 2020-21, there were very, very few foreign visits that any of us did. So, in a sense, the picture I would like to present to you, in essence, is what has been happening in our country in the last 2.5 years. And the big issue, the big challenge that we faced, like everybody else, was the COVID. When the COVID first hit us in the first quarter of 2020, I don't think any of you are unaware of what was our health system at our point of time. You can honestly say that perhaps no country was prepared for it, but the countries whose health infrastructure was not developed had a bigger problem coping with the enormity of the COVID. And in 2020, in fact, the real, I would say, achievement, national achievement for us, was that a country which did not make masks, which did not make ventilators, which did not, people had not even heard this term PPE, which all of us today think is just another word. And we could not only produce what 1.3 billion people needed, but we could also set up centers for dedicated treatment of people who had come down with COVID. And we went through 2020, in fact, through very, very rapid build-up of our own capabilities. In 2021, of course, we had what was a very, very serious Delta wave. Again, I'm sure every one of you has had relatives and friends who in some form were affected. I don't think there's anybody who was unaffected by that particular wave. And there, actually, we saw the strength of the Indian community. We saw the strength of the Indian community in terms of how all of you responded to the situation in our country. We saw our friendships, our international friendships also deliver at that point of time. Saudi Arabia, for example, was very helpful with supply of oxygens and both with liquid medical oxygen as well as with containers. And that is a time people speak about friendships and relationships and international cooperation. We talk about attachment of the country to its diaspora and of the diaspora for the motherland. We saw this all demonstrated in 2021. Now, 2 years of COVID, I think the country came through the test. And what was different this time was that we were able to produce vaccines in very large numbers. So there was made in India vaccine available for 1.3 billion people. We also had our own vaccines, starting with one, but now a few more. And so this time something different took place in India, which was in terms of the vaccination. We were not a country which was left behind. We pretty much did it at the same time as everybody else. But it wasn't just that we did it. In this period, because my business did not stop, so I still found ways of traveling, and I still go to parts of the world where large numbers of people are not vaccinated. Sometimes I go to places where there are vaccines, but they've not been able to get the shots in the arm. So I want you to appreciate really the extent to which our country has risen to this challenge. Not just by responding immediately to the emergency, mass emergency medical situation which happened, but by producing the vaccines, by creating a platform, by ensuring that vaccines were delivered to the right people at the right time, so that everybody got their messages on their phone saying that is where you have to go for vaccination. So the combination of, I would say, becoming the pharmacy of the world, but also the digital, in a sense, the digital innovator and leader in this situation, the two coming together has actually had a remarkable impact where the COVID was concerned. Now that's in response to the COVID. Now, a second problem which everybody faced was, of course, the economy, because everybody's economy took a hit. We ourselves went through a certain period of a complete lockdown. And so the challenge which everybody had was, how quickly do you recover? And how much do you recover? Now, here too, I would say what we have done is definitely worth studying. That many countries spent a lot of public money. Almost, I would say, like a knee-jerk, they were in a hurry to respond to the crisis situation. So they didn't, all of them necessarily use their funds, use the resources wisely. In our case, we actually focused on, first of all, creating a safety net. I don't know whether all of you are aware that through this entire period, actually, there is a program to give free rations to 80 crore people, 800 million people. No country in the world has done this. There is a program to give money in the bank accounts of 40 crore people, more than 40 crore people. Very few countries in the world have done that either. And so what happened 100 years ago when the Spanish flu came, which was as many people died of food shortages and unemployment as they did of the disease. That did not happen, because one thing Prime Minister was very clear from day one, that not one person would die on his watch due to hunger. And that was something he very passionately felt, and he got it done on the ground, again using this digital backbone that we had created. Because we had done Jan Dhan Yojana, there were bank accounts into which we could put in the funds. Because there was the Aadhaar card, there was again a digital identity by which the rations could move effectively. But beyond the COVID response, there are other big changes happening in this country. That era when, what was the requirement of the people was defined in very minimal terms. That era is now behind us. We think today that it is, just giving food is not enough. It is not it is not what I would call the basic requirement of society. So we've had actually transformative programs today underway. Programs which connect all houses to electricity. All houses, this is the scale, the big program right now we are trying to do. Connect every house with tap water, what we call Har Ghar Jal. A program actually to make sure as many people have houses as possible. So there is a big Awas Yojana and a Gramin Awas Yojana. And the idea is to support the weak and vulnerable so that the home ownership in India grows in large numbers. Programs to help the farmers, because ultimately one of the lessons of COVID was that trade got disrupted, ports got closed. You know, we could not depend, a country like India could not depend on somebody else to feed it. So how do you actually support your farmers to grow more? But also at the same time, make sure while these programs on meeting the basic societal needs. By the way, a huge program on insurance. Today, you may be again perhaps a little surprised to know that as many as 45 crore people, 450 million, are in some way or the other an insurance beneficiary of a government program. So if you look at these numbers, 800 million people who are getting rations, 400 million people who are getting money in their bank accounts, 450 million people who are getting insurance. Today, the number of people who are getting health benefit, Jan Arogya Yojana, that is also reaching today hundreds of millions. So what was perhaps even 3-4 years ago a dream, that our citizens would be educated, the power, water, homes, insurance, health, that dream, that aspiration is today happening in India probably at a much faster rate than most of you imagine. But along with that, there are equally powerful efforts today to actually grow our economy, to move towards becoming a higher income country. And again, a lot of this has required a vision. It has required a very prudent management of our fiscal resources. It has required policies which have made it easier for banks to lend, for small and medium companies to get lending, even for self-employed people to get lending. How do you change the credit policy? How do you change the banking policy? How do you change the education policy? How do you change the labor policy? All these are today underway at different levels. Many of these big reforms have taken place. And the result of that you can see in two very interesting developments. One, in the year which is just over, 31st of March this year, we have posted the highest export that we have ever done. So our total exports were $670 billion. We had a trade in goods of $400 billion. And it has today, the idea of India as a trading power, that has become credible today. The second is that although many other new challenges have happened because of the Ukraine conflict, price of oil has gone up, price of food has gone up, price of shipping has gone up, insurance has gone up. But we are still very confident that India will be the fastest growing major economy in the world this year. We are confident that we will get at least 7% growth. So I share with you this picture because when I go in tomorrow to meet my Saudi counterparts, in their minds, they will be meeting the foreign minister of the 5th largest economy. Many of you would have seen the report. We have just overtaken the United Kingdom in the size of our economy. They will be meeting the foreign minister of the fifth largest economy, the foreign minister of the fastest growing major economy, the foreign minister of a country which has not just responded to the COVID challenge, but come out of it very, very strongly. One whose digital capabilities and whose health infrastructure has grown in this period, and whose ability to take care of its people abroad has also been demonstrated. Now, there are 2.5 million of you in this country. Altogether, perhaps in the world, there are 3 crore, roughly 3 crore Indians, 30 million Indians, or people of Indian origin. I want you to remember this COVID period and think of this, the Vande Bharat mission that we undertook. Because when the COVID happened, you had in this globalized world so many people who were stuck abroad. In fact, those who had homes abroad were the lucky people. There were many people who had gone as tourists, people who had gone as students, the dormitories shut down. People who went as merchant shipping, the ship discharged them in some port. People who went as air crews, they left them somewhere else. So we brought back 7 million people, 70 lakh people through Vande Bharat mission. I mean, actually in the history of the world, nobody has done that kind of evacuation. And it can be during COVID. It was also demonstrated during the Ukraine conflict, where more than 20,000 of our students were trapped in the middle of a conflict. And we actually moved. I mean, the Prime Minister spoke to Putin, he spoke to Zelensky. We moved heaven and earth to get those students back. So that is the India today which the world sees, which in a sense is something that, if you are from a country which is respected more, which is more relevant to the rest of the world, I think the benefit of that also goes to the community. So let me say a few words about where we stand in respect to the community. We have, particularly under Prime Minister Modi, we see the world as a global workplace. Everybody sees the world as a trading place, as a marketplace. But we also see the world as a workplace where our citizens can travel, can work, can go so legally with full protection, that if there are contracts, they get the benefits of that. So one of our big foreign policy priorities is really to ensure that our people get the right treatment abroad, that your problems are our problems. Now, obviously, there will be issues, different countries offer different kinds of challenges. I think many of the kind of issues which happen here. But I would say, as someone who has been in the Ministry of External Affairs, both as a professional, now as a minister, for more than 40 years, the kind of attention today that the government gives to the Indian community abroad, I have not seen it before. And the resources that go into it, the attention that goes into it, even I would say the emotion that goes into it, that is something of a very, very different order. I therefore want you all to understand that there are very practical ways by which we respond. We have an Indian Community Welfare Fund. We have broadened its usage. We have put into motion different ways by which we get to know of Indians in distress situations. I think you would have all seen the change even in the attitude of embassies and consulates, that they are today much more responsive, much more open, much more conscious than they were before. And that too is part of the change that India is undergoing. So these were some of the thoughts that I had. I thought, again, it's for me a very good start for a visit, that I have the opportunity to meet all of you. I'm sure you have some issues in your mind. I'd be very happy to listen to them. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer. If there are suggestions, please feel free to make it openly but briefly. I'd be willing to listen. So once again, thank you. It's a great pleasure meeting all of you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insight, especially on the challenges faced by India during the COVID times and the government's response. Namaste and good evening to all. We'll now have a brief interactive session as time permits. We have received a large number of questions addressed to the Honorable Minister, but due to time constraints, only a few important questions have been shortlisted. I'll call out the names, and the concerned person can address the question to the Honorable Minister. So we start with a question from a Pravas Bharati awardee, sir, Mrs. Zinat Jaffrey. Unfortunately, she has not brought her eyeglasses. I'll just read the question.
But you can please speak. My hearing is still good.
I would like to. A very good evening to everybody present here. Sir, my humble request is that since I belong to education field, I want what our government of India is doing to benefit our children for higher education here. Since Saudi government has taken initiatives to give permission to start colleges or a unit of university, can our Indian government help us in this regard to set up our senior girls and boys to study here?
In Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, ji.
Okay. Well, it's it's interesting you asked that because we have something called the new education policy. This also, please sit down. This was also something which was debated and finalized during the last few years. The new education policy, look, very frankly, when the country grew, when the economy grew, our educational institutions and capacities did not grow at the same pace at which the country grew. So today we have a situation where there are actually something like 11 lakh Indian students studying abroad. Okay. It has, of course, a financial implication, but in many cases, people went abroad because maybe they didn't have enough choices at home. And that's also a reality we have to deal with. So the one part of what the government is trying to do is actually to see how rapidly we can expand higher education. And not only higher education, a lot of effort has gone to improve literacy, to improve school enrollment, to improve school retention, to focus on girls in school. So all of that is there. But the higher education bit, if you will see, many more medical colleges are coming up, engineering colleges are coming up, IT institutions are coming up. So that's happening at home. But as part of the new education policy relevant to your question, there is a clear recognition that there has to be more global international collaboration. Now, we can have international collaboration in different ways. One is that Indians establish institutions outside. I think that is of interest to you. I think the new education policy would encourage that. The other is that we actually work with foreign universities in India, that we find ways which are mutually acceptable, how to collaborate. I think people are still working out models of that, but there is definitely a clear sense that it is for the good of the country if our educational institutions go out. It is good of the country if the world's educational institutions collaborate in India with us. So I am quite hopeful in the coming years that something will happen in this space.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Dr. K.R. Jayachandran. He's an educationalist and a writer. Please.
Honorable Minister and other dignitaries, good evening to you all. You have mentioned about the Ukraine conflict. There were many children who were studying here in Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries, and they went to Ukraine for higher education. Thanks for your support to bring such children back to India. And now Medical Commission has agreed for the transfer and mobility program. Fortunately, they are getting a chance, but unfortunately, they are not able to get their certificates and transcript from the Ukraine universities. So my question to you is, can you direct the Indian embassy in Ukraine to get their certificate so that they can continue their education in India or other countries, mobility or transfer program?
Okay. Look, I would share with you my impression that our embassy in Ukraine has been very active, in fact, I would say proactive in this respect. So even before the conflict began in February, in fact, they were reaching out to universities, telling students, look, this is getting dangerous, you have to think about your continuing out here. Then there's that whole advisory, etc. So I am very sure that the embassy on its own, would be, and we have a very good, a very senior ambassador there. Of course, the embassy size is small, but still, I think it's a very active embassy. So I would imagine that on their own, they would be very helpful to students who have, if I understand it, they need help with the universities to get documentation, right? If I understood the problem. But since you mentioned it, and there must be a reason why you are raising it with me, I will make it a point to actually check personally with the embassy. If there are any issues, I can assure you that we will do everything to support them, because in whatever manner we can be helpful to the students. We are very, very sympathetic to them. They've had their education interrupted by factors which nobody could have imagined. So I will speak to the embassy, and whatever help they will give, I'm very sure that they will do so.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Mr. Satish Deepak from the International Yoga Club.
Good evening, sir. I am here to explore the possibilities of an Indian Culture Center. Sir, the Ministry of External Affairs has established Indian Culture Centers in 38 countries and various chairs for Indian studies in 51 countries. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has more than 2.5 million expatriates workforce with over 150,000 students studying in various schools. Thus, the Indian diaspora in the kingdom is perhaps the largest expatriate community. It has been a long cherished dream of our Indian community for an Indian Culture Center in Riyadh. As we all know, yoga assumes phenomenal popularity in Saudi Arabia, and which has accepted it as a sport item as well. A memorandum of understanding has been signed between Saudi Sports Ministry and Indian Ministry of Ayush for yoga-related researches and cooperations. How yoga therapy and Ayurveda can be a part of the healthcare system in Saudi Arabia. And in this context, we need your advice and support for the Indian Culture Center and the Center of Excellence in Yoga, Riyadh.
What is happening in respect of the IC? By the way, just for my knowledge, I assume that the community itself must be having some centers where people meet and have opportunities. Would that be the case? Huh? On embassy would be the only place. Okay. Okay. Now, to be very honest, I cannot, I have no knowledge why there was no cultural center earlier. Okay. what I can tell you is right now, the ICCR is kind of doing a stock taking evaluation of where there should be cultural centers, because often, you need to, I would say, look at the efficiency point of view. Sometimes you have too many in one region, you don't have in another region. All of us have fixed budgets in which we operate, so it's a question of rationalizing your resources. We have completed the domestic part of the rationalization, which was, we had many regional centers in India. We have reduced it so that we have made it more efficient and made it more programmatic rather than establishment driven. A similar exercise is going on. So what I will do is, I'll certainly take your concern on board. I mean, the fact that there are 2.5 million Indians who live here is a very powerful argument. I quite see the point. But I will also try to understand for my own planning, what in the past have been the reservations. I do not know the history of this. Regarding yoga and wellness, look, we are trying to universalize both of them. We are trying to universalize both of them, because if you look at both these, I would say, practices, they have caught on in the world because the rest of the world has treated it as universal. People have not, yes, people understand they came from India, but beyond that, they have localized it. They have localized it, they have owned it, they have customized it. And that is the beauty of it. I mean, when we have on the International Day of Yoga, actually this guardian ring which starts from the east and then goes across the entire world, it has happened because it's like a campaign. It is owned by the practitioners. It is actually, it's not something organized by governments. So spreading wellness and yoga definitely is something which we would encourage. I think it's also something, I'm here for a meeting with my counterpart, the foreign minister here. And the segment which I deal with, the two of us deal with, are the political, security, also the cultural side. So it's something which I will have an opportunity tomorrow to speak to them also. And we would definitely support any kind of bilateral collaboration, and any encouragement which the Saudi system can give, we would definitely work towards encouraging that.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Mr. Revel Anthony Abel. He belongs to the Saudi Arabian Telugu Association.
Good evening, Your Excellency. Sir, my question to you is, India has articulated an act, East Policy, called SAGAR, a Gulf Engagement and Central Asian Initiative. Sir, how does this policy fit into the partnership with Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think it fits in many ways, because definitely if you look at the Gulf policy, I mean, Saudi Arabia is the biggest country in the Gulf. So a lot of our Gulf policy hinges around our Saudi policy. But it also applies to SAGAR, because SAGAR is our maritime policy, and Saudi Arabia and we are maritime neighbors as well. And Saudi Arabia, has a lot of influence. It is a G20 country. It has interests and views and which extend to a considerable distance. So our effort, when you spoke of those 3 or 4 things, I want to make you think like a scheme. Okay, there is India at the center. Around India are the neighbors of India, the immediate neighbors of India: Nepal, in Nepal, Bhutan, then Myanmar on this side, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan that side. So for the immediate neighbors, we have a policy called neighborhood first. Neighborhood first means give priority to neighbors, work with them, make sure their growth, your growth go together, be very generous, help them with connectivity, with contacts. That's the neighborhood. But if you look at historical India was very present in the Gulf. It was very present in Southeast Asia, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, etc. It was very present in Central Asia. So these examples that you said, today it is an India under Prime Minister Modi, which is today thinking bigger, saying that, look, for me, these are my extended neighborhoods. These are places where culturally, historically, economically, people connect with me. So even with the Gulf, but look look at the history today actually of these societies and us. Look how strong the connections have been, how long those connections have been. Now, somewhere, we lost that sense, and I think today we are getting that sense back. I can tell you again, the attention which the Prime Minister has given. He's been to virtually all the Gulf countries, many of them multiple times. I have been to actually all of them. So the Gulf appreciates it. One thing which we heard from this region is that we see today India, the Indian leadership, different facets of India in a way in which we have never seen before. So, and in all of this, Saudi Arabia is obviously the biggest country in the region, and obviously, and it's a country with whom there's a very strong connect as well at different levels.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Mr. Dilshad Ahmed, is President of the Indian Forum for Education.
Honorable Minister, all the dignitaries, attendees, good evening. Sir, renewal of passport from the embassy is taking a long time. It was easy till few years back, but has suddenly become wearisome due to police inquiry at the Indian address. The inquiry is delayed and difficult as a whole family has been living abroad and family has been living abroad and neighbors don't know sufficient information, especially in urban cities and high-rise buildings. Many people have suffered a lot due to unnecessary delay in the renewal of passport. Thank you very much.
Did you have this problem?
Others have called me.
No.
Process.
I'm curious.
I have not come to this point now.
Okay. My understanding, first of all, I think you would agree with me, generally our passport issuance system, all the various documents you get from government have the speed at which they happen have improved over the last few years. I think the problem you are referring to, and if I'm wrong, please tell me, when somebody has got a passport and the passport is due for reissue after 10 years, if the particulars have changed, then I think that is where the problem happens. That is where some reference, a recheck is required. So that's, to recheck something if the particulars have changed, that's not an unreasonable situation. If, somebody's name has changed, somebody's address has changed, after all, the authority issuing the passport wants to make sure that the passport is going to the right person. That is also the responsibility. Remember, the person signing off on your passport is also taking a responsibility. So they have to satisfy themselves that it is correct. But if from what you are saying, this is getting delayed, and that too unreasonably delayed, then I think it is something which clearly needs to be looked into. Let me actually perhaps ask all our passport officers to give me a sense of what these numbers are. Are they episodic? Are they particular passport officers? Because there is a variation also. We find some states, some passport officers, things move very fast. There are some states it doesn't move that fast. So I'll take a look, definitely. We had, by the way, I must also tell you, there was a surge in passport applications. The number of passport applications this year are running to more than 50%, 60%, the normal average. Because many people did not renew passports during COVID. So we are also struggling because we are the same number of people, So we are also struggling with a demand hike of more than 50, 60%. We have tried to find ways of responding to that as well. But I will take a look at this concern.
Thank you, sir. Dear friends, we are running out of time. For the interactive session, we'll have to come to a close as the Honorable Minister will have to proceed to his other engagements for the day. But I'm sure all of you would like to take a photograph with the Honorable Minister. He has kindly agreed, and I would request people to come from the row. So the first row people will come, sir will be sitting, and
I'll be standing. I won't be sitting. Okay. I will be standing with them.
So I'll request the first row people to come for every 2020. So we'll have it fast because the next two session. Pardon? I know we have about hundreds of questions, but we just don't have time.
So, sorry, you had a question?
There are questions which will not come up here.
We're just running out of time.
It will be replied because I have a related question delayed in passport on PCC.
The delayed PCC.
Yeah.
Okay, I will bear that in mind. Okay, come, let's take a look.
Please. Photographs will be shared on our Facebook page, so don't worry. Please.